All right, there you go. Good evening, everybody, here in the office of the MCB4 and on virtual. The boxes, as I said, the squares. So tonight, you're at the November meeting of the Arts, Culture, Education, and Schools Committee. Thank you for being here. We have a wonderful presentations, agenda for you, several interesting topics to discuss. Just wanted to remind everybody that MCB4 has adopted a hybrid meeting policy whereby we will both meet in person and virtually. All community board committee meetings will require an in-person forum, come to order, and conduct business. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or an extraordinary circumstance as defined by New York State Open Meetings Law. Excused committee members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Committee members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. And we, of course, encourage members of the public to join virtually. And our hybrid policy, which this is part of, can be found on our website. Tonight, of course, the meeting is being recorded and is currently live streaming on our website. So with that, why don't we go around the room and introduce ourselves? My name is Alan Oster. I am the chair of the ACES committee.
I'm Josephine Ishman, also a co-chair.
Charlie Todd, member of the committee for Hell's Kitchen.
Okay. There's Wendy Gonzalez, committee member. Ian Chenko, committee member.
Thank you. So just a little piece of business. Of course, you got Leslie on my. Oh, Leslie. Hi, Leslie.
Leslie Bogosian Murphy, also from Hell's Kitchen.
Just a little piece of business information. Our presenters will have time to make their presentations. The committee will have an opportunity to ask questions. And if there's anybody in the public who wishes to ask questions, we'll address that also. And then we'll come back to committee for comment and see if there's anything further we want to move ahead with. So with that, our first presentation, I'll turn that over to my co-chair for the intro.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have anyone in the public for the public session? Is anyone raised their hand, or we'll just move on?
We do have 3 members from the public in the attendee section. None of them raised their hands for.
Oh, okay.
Well, we can give them 30 seconds if you'd like to.
So we have a slight change in the agenda. We're actually going to start with Iris Gersten from the Department of Education, who is here to talk about the 60-day notices that families residing in shelters will be receiving, around this time into the end of this year, and how that is going to affect our schools and student learning. Our district community board 4, we have a lot of hotels here, and we've been housing many families, even prior to the migrant situation. Our schools have been welcoming many students in temporary housing. So every time students are moved, it creates a disruption. So Iris has been, working with these students in these schools for many years, and is a great advocate on their behalf. And so we're so happy to have her here. And Iris, if you can just sort of talk about what you know about it and what you have seen in the past or what you expect to see.
Sure. Okay, I don't know whether or not you've seen the 60-day letter. The 60-day letter, I will provide you a copy of it when I'm done, okay? And you can pass it around. Talks about how crowded the city is, how difficult things are, and that the people have to consider moving. And the HERC organization, Health and Hospitals Corporation, has a special team that's going into every HERC. They're doing one HERC at a time for the 60-day letters. They did the Row last week. They're doing the Stewart this week. There are 14 HERCs in Manhattan. The letter says, we will make arrangements for you to go anywhere you want in the United States. Do you have a friend or a family? Would you like to live in a warmer climate? Nowhere in this letter does it say you have the right to shelter and you can return and reapply. The DOE came out with a statement as well to send to principals and superintendents. And it was stopped in City Hall to say, you have the right to return to shelter. So this is a verbal message that we're giving our families. All right. In addition to the HERCs, the Health and Hospital Corporation HERCs, HPD, Housing Preservation Development, also has HERCs. There has been an overflow where there wasn't room. HPD got into the act, rented some hotels. Those families living in those HERCs are also getting 60-day letters. They already have. These 60-day letters should come due, the first ones, Christmas week, when the DOE is not in session. So it's very important to educate families. Now, with this, they have the right to return. I can't tell you where because they're not telling us yet where they can return to. Like in New York City, shelter families go to the PATH, asylum seekers go to the Roosevelt Hotel. I don't know if that's going to be the place or if they're going to get redirected someplace else. But I would recommend tell families to return to the Roosevelt. All right. There are also, you should know, accommodations. I have opened up almost all of the HERCs by registering kids for school in the past 2 years. And in every HERC, I find a multiply handicapped child, an autistic child. They all have letters from their native countries written in Spanish to show developmental disabilities or medical problems. Those children, those families can apply for accommodations, which means they can stay and they'll get another 60-day notice. So it buys them 2 months. Now, let's blow this out of proportion a little bit because I had an idea today. A lot of these children are having problems in school above and beyond the trauma they've been through. They need to be evaluated by the Committee on Special Education. Some are learning disabled, some are intellectually disabled. So they've started doing evaluations. I think it's entirely appropriate for the school to give a letter to the parent saying, this is a child with these issues. This child is being evaluated. If this child is moved, they will have to start from scratch in a new school. Please consider accommodations. And that's something I was thinking about. Parents should be told to get letters from doctors to stay in their shelter, because when these families leave the shelter, they're not going back to the shelter that they came from. I would imagine that within an hour, that room is cleaned and another family is put in there. You all know about Floyd Bennett Field?
Yes,
Okay,
right.
all right. So Floyd
Oh, wait,
Bennett,
can you talk about that a little bit, please? Yeah.
okay. Floyd Bennett Field is in Brooklyn. It's right before the Marine Park Bridge. It's right before Reese Park. It's freezing. They built pods for families. What they are these little rooms, probably the size of your bathroom, with 3 army cots. The bathrooms are outside. The eating facilities are outside. There's no place to stand in this little room. I don't know where kids are going to do homework. And there's a bus that comes every half hour. I don't know how kids are going to get from Floyd Bennett Field to go to school. You all know the issues with OPT and getting busing. This is going to be a monster, as I see it. I don't know. They're saying only new families are going into Floyd Bennett Field. That means people coming in from other states still, because we've been averaging about 4,000 asylum seekers a week. It's incredible. So they're saying only new families go there, but I don't know if they're going to take the families with the 60-day letters and put them in Floyd Bennett Field, because it's such a horrific environment. If nothing else, that's going to want you to leave the state. I don't know. I mean, that's my own subjective opinion. They've arranged for the MTA to come and give a bus to bring those people to Coney Island to get on a train from Coney Island if you have to get somewhere. But you have to think it's such a large, vacant, expanse of land. And I think it's 3 miles to civilization, where you can get to a supermarket, where you can buy food, where you can get to a school. Transportation will have to be provided, but that's Floyd Bennett Field. And a lot of the families that were taken to Floyd Bennett Field on Sunday got out of the van, went inside and said, I'm not staying here. They got back on the bus. There's an article in the Post about this. I don't know how correct it is, but I have been told by HERC staff that if they return from Floyd Bennett Field, they're being told, well, what state would you like to go to? I don't know what's happening with those families, and this is relatively new. They just started putting families in there on Sunday. All right, what else can I tell you? Can you ask questions?
Yes. I can start. I do have a question and then we'll take it around the room. So with the 60-day notices, does this mean that, okay, if a family gets a notice and they're moved in 60 days, that potentially they can get another 60-day notice?
You're going to be getting 60-day notices every 60 days. Further,
Okay.
every family coming into shelter now, not DHS shelters, because the state won't allow it. Any family coming into a HERC shelter is getting a 60-day notice.
So
And-
potentially a family could move 5 times in the school year because
Right.
if it's every 60 days.
Correct. And in addition to that, in this letter that they've sent out, they said, we have the right to move you before your 60 days are up. I don't know if they're looking to make people uncomfortable. I don't know what the agenda is. To me, it creates more work for the staff. What I envision happening with all of this is they're going to take Manhattan families. They're going to put them out in Queens. You know, they can put them by the airport where there's nothing. They can put them in Staten Island. Then the school of origin, they're entitled to stay in the school of origin or transfer to the local zone school. But the school is the only thing that the kids have, the only long-term relationship they've had since they've been in the States. And getting from one HERC in one borough to another HERC with what's going on with OPT, and we're doing busing, we are, and they're working as fast as they can. But all of these bus routes that we've created with families gone, we're going to need new routes. I don't know how this is going to be managed. And I see this as being a disaster.
All right. Okay, thank you. Alan has a question?
Thank you, Iris. Why is it just the HERC facilities? Are there other facilities similar to this one by city agencies that are not being affected?
That's a good question. The HERCs are run by Health and Hospitals Corporation. The HPD is run by, the HPD HERCs are run by Housing Preservation Development. Then there are the DHS shelters, the domestic violence shelters, and the crisis shelters for unaccompanied youth. Those are the 5 different shelters we have. DHS is run by New York State. New York State will now not allow this to happen. The best thing to happen to a family is if they get a 60-day notice, if they get placed in a DHS shelter, they'll be left alone. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Charlie?
Thank you, Iris. So just to clarify, if there's a family going to school in our district and they're moved way out in Queens somewhere, you know, that's hours, 2-hour commute, they may retain their seat in our district, or they also have the right to go into a local school wherever they are placed.
Correct.
And then what about for the next school year? Are they then forced into a local school wherever they are at that time? Or I guess that might be 5 different places from now.
They are allowed to stay in the school of origin no matter where they move. If they stay in the school of origin and they go from Queens to Staten Island to the Bronx, they can still stay in the school of origin. But our families have young children, they have babies. Look, think about it, taking a child to school in the morning from Queens to Manhattan when you had a 3-month-old baby in the middle of the winter is unconscionable. It's very difficult to do. And this is going to happen every 2 months.
And for our schools, every 2 months, if the students that we have are moving away and perhaps not choosing to make an arduous commute, are we to assume that our schools will just sort of have new students every 60 months? I mean, will there be new families moving into the Row Hotel who will then take the place of
Correct.
the
Correct.
students?
That's
So the
what's
teachers
going to
are gonna have a
happen.
constant turnover.
Because, all right, and here's another thing that goes on. Everything that happens in the HERC is confidential. The only way we know children are living in the HERC is because we did the registrations in the HERC and we made sure to get the room numbers. But we don't have an MOU with them and they don't give us any information whatsoever. So we don't know what's going on, and we don't know when a family decides to move out of New York State. We don't know that. An attendance teacher will come or a guidance counselor will call me and say, where is this family? I have to get a hold of a HERC employee. I will get a message. This child was discharged November 11th. They went to Arizona, period. Now, insofar as the DOE, you need certain codes to discharge children. And when you have a child, do you want to see that child? You want to hear that child? Or you want a request from another state for the school records to know that child is enrolled in another school? We're not getting that. So we have a difficult time discharging these children and finding out where they are.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any other questions?
One question.
Go ahead.
This is obvious, but just to clarify, there is no requirement of the school system to help a parent get a child from their new residence to school.
Well, if the family wants busing, we will put in for busing. When you live in a HERC, you have to do an exception form. The school has to do an exception form, which goes into this mailbox at OPT that takes a couple of weeks to be looked at. And then they will try to route the child. Now you're talking now about routing borough to borough, which is much more difficult than Upper Manhattan to Lower Manhattan. And it's much more arduous. And I don't know how many routes they have. I know we don't have enough buses. I know we don't have enough drivers. We're doing the best we can. But yes, I anticipate a problem.
Right, but it could take weeks to get actually a bus route, correct?
And then you're getting 60-day notice.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, Leslie has a question online?
Thanks, Josephine. Iris, your impossible job just got harder. I mean, you already had an impossible task before, and now it's really, a few questions for you. Is this a specifically mayoral office policy? Is this policy coming from the mayor?
Yes.
It is the mayor's office. Okay. Second thing is, I understand the 60-day notice, because I'm guessing, and tell me if I'm wrong, they want to be nimble, right? Because people are coming in. There's so many people coming in, so they want that, I guess, nimble to kind of shuffle people around. Or is that what the sense you're getting?
The sense, okay, they did this with single men before they did it with families.
Yeah.
And many of the single men left New York. So they figured the families will leave. They don't realize that it's a very different group of people. And I don't think, we do have families that are leaving. They're making plans. But I don't think they're going to have the numbers that they had for the single men who can just go on their own, that, you know, they have no encumbrances. With children, it's a different story.
Yeah, with families, it might not be as much as a transition period as with singles that come here and they can move on to another city or state or I don't know if you remember, the same thing happened at Josephine, do you remember the Skyline? That was a family shelter. And then when COVID started, they moved all those families out without giving PS 111 any notice that these kids were moving to put in single men. I don't know, Iris, if you remember that, but it seems a little similar. I'm curious about the
well, that's DHS, and DHS
Yeah.
also, DHS periodically will remove 25 families from a shelter, not tell us, and put them in another shelter because they're trying to group the asylum families all together. They don't want to mix up New York City families and asylum families. And we don't know until when my staff will call me and say, there's a bus outside and these families are going someplace. You know, they could give us advance notice. We could make arrangements. We could be more helpful. We could understand. Doesn't happen.
So at the very least, are you suggesting, like you said, this 60-day notice, though it's all factual that they could go here, we can send them there, but they're omitting the part where they have the right or the option
Right to shelter.
so
Yes.
that would be one thing that we can definitely, I guess, mention, right? Because that is something that is very important. It seems like it's obviously omitted on purpose, right? Because they're trying to, I guess, encourage people to leave. Or I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth.
It seems like that to me. You're
Okay.
making these families incredibly uncomfortable. It's very difficult.
And my last question is there is there a world where, do you find that all these asylum seekers are on a even playing field, or is it, what I'm saying, is there a world where we can prioritize families? Or no, are they just like everyone else that comes through?
Well, I'm trying to prioritize families with children that have issues that should not be moved. That's the only thing I can think of to do. You've got families, like the Venezuelan families, some of them have begun to work. So they have jobs, they have a schedule. This is going to throw a wrench into everything if they're living someplace else. And then, you know, the commute to pick up your kid from school or bring your kid to school and go to work, it becomes much, much harder, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iris. I think I would love to get a copy of that letter. And we don't have quorum, right, Jesse? So we can't, we're just gonna go to the next one. We can discuss this later, though.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, let me also,
Thank you.
I have one more thing to say.
Yes, yes.
We have been for the past year bringing families to the shed at Hudson Yards. We do this every 3 months. We have, and if any of you want to come offer services, you are more than welcome. We have medical, we have dental, we have eye, we have legal, we have education, we give out stuff. We give out, this is going to be for Christmas. So I'm trying to come up with Christmas presents. It's going to be on December 16th. Anybody that wants to volunteer, please get in touch with me. I'll hook you up. Anybody that's bilingual, that would be great. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that positive last note.
All right. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Okay. Nice seeing you, Iris. Take care. Okay. So, next on our agenda tonight, we have Eric Washington, who's been an advocate for the former colored school, and he was really took leadership in getting that school the landmark status that it now has. And Eric was here a couple of months ago during that process, and now we just would like to follow up and see, so basically just get his ideas on what he would like to see in the future of that school. And we invited, we also have Carl Wilson here from our Councilman Botcher's office to talk about money that's been allocated to the school, I believe, to fix the roof. So we just kind of want to get a sense of where that is, and if the school right now, I believe, is under the Department of Sanitation. If that or when it's going to be moved, that's going to be moved to another agency. So maybe we could just start with Eric, and if you could just sort of give us a very brief sort of background, and then just kind of lead into, you know, what your thoughts are about the future of this building.
Hi, am I audible? Hi, thank you, Josephine, for inviting me to come here, and hello, everyone. It's actually been more than a couple of months. I think it's been about a year since I spoke to ACES, but time has flown. It was back at May 23rd, exactly, that the school was landmarked. And that same morning, Mayor Adams pledged $6 million towards rehabilitation. So that was all very positive. Mayor Adams asked on the site, you know, what he saw happening to it, and Eric Botcher deferred to me, and I communicated that there's been a sort of a general informal consensus that the school should be converted into some sort of a cultural center that really rehearses something of its original use. Not to say that it would be a school again, but that might have an educational component, an exhibition component, perhaps a performance space. And when I think of performance, that could include like speaker series, as well as perhaps music or whatever, but some sort of cultural center that focuses on the exploring and amplifying the 400-year history of Blacks in New York. Not that it would be specifically an African-American space, but really for everyone, and locals and visitors alike. That said, I certainly have not heard from anyone in city government since then. So I don't know what the status of it is. I have spoken with the SHPO, the National Register of Historic Places, which is very interested in making a site visit. So I've been trying to arrange that through, I first approached Eric Botcher's office, and they looped me into a contact from sanitation, and I'm still waiting to hear back about that, whether or not they'll give permission for us to get access. I'm also interested in getting some sort of access with sanitation to get an idea of, if they have an idea of a schedule of doing repairs. I know there's been the promise of money towards rehabilitation, but it's not clear what that means. If you're rehabilitating something, it assumes that there's some sort of a plan. So I'm not aware that anyone has come up with any plan, with which, I mean, are they planning to rehabilitate it toward its last state when sanitation was using it, or some attempt to create a new design, or to recreate its old design? I have no idea. But also what's happened, I'm not aware, and I don't have the impression that anything has happened in terms of addressing some of the low-hanging fruit problems, which is to say the roof and the windows. So I know I was by there a few weeks ago, and there are still holes in the windows, and that seems an easy fix, where even if you just got clear plexiglass and put it over that, so that, I mean, we're having crazy weather that's going on, and so the elements are still coming in. So I confess I'm concerned about the potential for demolition by neglect, because there's, from my point of view, there's been no communication as to what from the city as to what they're doing, they've done so far, or plan to do, or a schedule, or whatever. So that's kind of where it stands thus far. I'm hoping to hear back soon from sanitation in terms of getting some sort of access so that we can step inside with the folks from the SHPO, as well as maybe some select people, an architect or whatever, who can look around and see what's there, and ask some more pointed questions that I would be able to ask myself, in addition to what I could ask.
Okay, I just have two questions, and then we can go around. The first is, how long has the building been vacant, or when did Department of Sanitation stop using it?
I'm not sure the exact date. I think it was something like 2015 or 16. I think it's been like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, because that is concerning, demolition by neglect. I mean, that's certainly something that we're going to have to think and talk about. The other thing is National Register of Historic Places. What does that actually mean? What would happen with that if they came to see it? What's the potential there, if anything? What could they do?
Well, it's similar to city landmarks. City landmarks has more teeth, as they say, but so it's an honorific. There are some restrictions. Like city landmarks, it's just for the exterior, not for the interior. They would want to get a sense of it, I think it's state for the interior. They commonly make site visits for places that are nominated to be on the register, and they're happy to do that. They come down from Albany. So it's good marketing, certainly if it's whatever it's going to become, and certainly if it was going to become some sort of cultural center, to be able to boast that this site is not only a New York City landmark, but it's on the National Register of Historic Places, as it should be, because it's of national significance as well. That's a plus in terms of marketing.
Wonderful. Jesse, our district manager, has a question.
Yeah, Eric, I'll come in from one because the state and national also opened the door for tax credits, right?
I believe there are certain perks that you get with being listed.
Yeah, I think that's what we understood from Patty's Market, that which has just been registered in the state, and so that opens the door for a lot of those buildings to be applied for statewide tax credits, which helps with any kind of project. So
Okay, that's good to know. Alan, did you have a question?
Let's switch over to Carl.
Okay. So we're gonna bring Carl on. Jessica, can we bring Carl on to see if he can, is he not there?
No, I'm here.
Oh, hi,
Can you hear me?
nice to see you.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with all my friends from CB4. So I am actually texting right now with the DSNY Chief of Staff, and he's telling me that he does have they do have an update on when they believe a better sense of timing about the repairs to begin here. And he's pulling it. So if he gets back to me before the end of this meeting, I will definitely share that with everyone. But he just said to me over text that they're happy to circle back with us to discuss this more in depth. So I think for the purposes of this evening, and I apologize, I don't have a more detailed update right at this moment, but I think the board can think about what it would like to see here, begin to opine on that for the use here. I know that our office has been approached by a theater company, a Black theater company, for instance, that was wanted to perhaps use it as explore the idea of using it as a home. I think the idea of some sort of cultural space of some kind is a good fit here, but we're open to suggestions and want to do what CB4's input here is going to be vital. So I can commit to following up with this committee and with Jesse about more details around the timeline of the repair. I think we should probably have a meeting separate from this one where we sit down with DSNY and talk about that. So again, I'm sorry I don't have a more concrete update right at this moment, but the Chief of Staff did just tell me that they're going to get back to me on it, and he says that they have more info on it. So for what that's worth. And by the way, Eric's been a fantastic partner, and really his advocacy around this site has been critical to its being saved, and the commitment from the mayor as well. So looking forward to continue to work with everybody here to restore and preserve this important building in our district.
And just one question. So for the money that's been allocated so far, so we know that there's no timeline, and we know there's an issue with the roof. Was that money allocated just for the roof, or do you know what?
I don't know the full scope of the 6 million, but the roof has been an issue from the jump here, so it would be difficult for me to imagine that that would not be part of the scope of the work. And I would want DSNY to speak to more of the details of the construction, but the roof is obviously a huge problem and something we would want to see dealt with right away.
Okay, Alan?
Thank you, Carl. So just a comment, it seems to me that what we have here is chicken and egg situation. What comes first? So you really can't start doing renovations inside until you know what you use. Because if you want a theater group or use it at theater, you have to have open space. I've never been in the building, but it's not a very wide building. So in order to make a stage and everything else, you're going to have to knock down a lot of walls and all that other stuff. And of course, there's the shutters and everything else that has to go in there. So I think the sooner we try to get some sort of consensus in terms of what the use is going to be, then we can figure out with architects and engineers and everything else what needs to be done. And then I guess you have to find the money for it. So that's just the only thing I just wanted to, put that out. Maybe the sooner we try to get some rules together, how whoever's going to be involved with deciding what the use is going to be, the better it will be in terms of moving the project. Thank you for your efforts.
I just want to add that I think Carl, you had put me in touch with New Federal Theater, which is the group, and I've spoken to. Matter of fact, I was at their final performance yesterday, and it's an iconic New York theater group founded by Woody King, and they used to be based at Henry Street Settlement. So it would be great, if they could. I was thrilled to know that they were interested in it. I know they're looking for a permanent home. I think that while I think it would be fabulous to have them connected to the building, it could be. I don't know if it would be a fit for them because of the scope of the building and for what they need. I think they need a place that is just theirs. So, and if you're entertaining the idea of maybe using it for other purposes as well, then that would be something to take into consideration. But I'm glad that they are contending with that. I also know that I was approached by Gensler architectural firm, and they work with interns all the time, and they've done this incredible plan for possibilities, and they work on these kinds of projects all over the place. So they've been giving a lot of concerted effort hypothetically as to how the building could be used for multiple purposes.
Yeah, I don't think we're committed to one group or another, I think, but that's sort of the direction of the use for the space right now. But I mean, if the board has other thoughts or strong feelings about this too, I think we should consider all of those things. Yeah, we want to make this a collaborative process.
I will say that there was one idea that I had put forth, and this was early on when it was discussed that, in terms of transferring the building, it was suggested that transferring the building to another city agency would be much easier than transferring it to a private agency. And I suggested, well, what about an agency like the Municipal Archives? And that went over well. And I'm also on one of the advisory boards for the Municipal Archives. They were very much game about doing that. But again, no one's calling the shots. It was just trying to set something up that had a sure hypothetical footing as a possibility. But they are certainly interested. I thought it was a pretty solid idea because they have all of these resources. They are the brainchild of the city's history, going back to even the Dutch period. So it would be, I think, a great entity because they could easily partner with a lot of other organizations that do things like mount exhibits and speaking series and that sort of thing. So they are another interested contender for the space.
Well, if I may, I'm sorry, I don't want to jump out of order if other board members want to speak, but I think, it has been quite some time since we've all had a huddle on this, probably since the summer. And given that DSMY appears to have some updates, I think we should all, some reps from the board and, of course, you, Eric, and our office all sit to really start iron out what the next steps are. And I'm happy to help organize that.
That would be wonderful, Carl. Thank you. Inga, did you have a question?
I did. So did I misunderstand? So the mayor committed to 6 million, but did the council member's office also commit to repairing the roof? Did I hear that correctly?
So, I mean, we lobbied for that $6 million. I mean, the way that the buckets of money work, we did not contribute any of our capital funds to this because it would suck up a lot of them. So since we had the backing of the mayor, that came out of their, his bucket, so to speak.
There's just one bucket. It's not coming from 2. That's what I wanted to make sure. Okay. Yeah, and then I just a comment, the municipal archives idea, I think is a great idea because I think it should be multi-use and have an educational component to it as well as artistic and historical. So I would lean more towards that rather than just giving one place a home permanently. I think that would benefit more people in more ways, so that's just my initial thought. But I'd like to be involved in helping decide or helping find a solution.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Carl. Is there anything else? Okay. So we'll be in touch, Carl. Definitely. It'll be great to have a meeting with you and Eric and Eric Washington and figure out what the next steps are. Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Eric, for joining us. It's great having you, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Okay, moving right along. Okay, so next we're very excited to have the American Classical Orchestra here to present on the work that they're doing in schools. So,
Hi, I'm Carly.
hey Carly.
I have a little presentation. I don't know if I can put it in the chat or share my screen, or if you guys have that.
You can go ahead and share your screen, Carly, and Dr. Carly, please, feel
Okay.
free to forward the presentation to me later, and I can make sure it gets around as well.
Okay, great. Let me just open up the presentation so it's ready, and then I will share my screen. Okay. There we go. And let's click share. Just let me know if you guys can see it over there on your end.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna move to present. So the American, let's see. Oh, there it goes. Okay. The American Classical Orchestra is a period orchestra that focuses on the Baroque, classical, and very, very, very early Romantic, basically up to Schubert, with historically informed performance techniques as well as historical instruments. So real instruments from the time period. So that's what the orchestra is, and they're the umbrella. We at Classical Music for Kids are the education arm. And so for over 24 years, we've been bringing classical music to various schools, predominantly elementary schools throughout the tri-state area, including New York City. And we would love to continue that mission and expand it. So in 1999, they began with the outreach to public schools in Connecticut, New York City proper, and in New Jersey. And throughout that 24-year history, they performed before over 400,000 elementary school children, particularly in New York City public schools. And many of these children are experiencing live music for the first time, live classical music for the first time. They're seeing a violin played in their presence for the very first time, or a flute, or in the case of Peter and the Wolf, a timpani drum. So it's a real life-changing experience, and it's inspiring for children who, would not have been otherwise exposed to classical music to know that there are, other sounds out there, other instruments, what makes the high pitches, what makes the low pitches, etc. Let me see if I can get that to go. Sorry, I'm going to go back. So that's a little bit about us. So what do? So we bring an interactive, age-appropriate classical music program to schools as well as community centers. We've been coming to libraries throughout the tri-state area as part of that 24-year history as well. And when we say age-appropriate, we take the music of Handel, we take the music of Mozart, the music of Beethoven, and we turn it into story form. And it's music that the kids can get up to and move. In the case of our Peter and the Wolf program that we're running right now, the students are invited to act out the animal characters that are presented with each instrument. So, for example, the oboe is a duck, and so the kids can waddle like a duck. The timpani is the hunters. The French horn is the wolf, so they can be like scary wolves. It's really fun for them. So they're not just listening to classical music, they're interacting with it. We've had programs, like I mentioned, about Mozart and the Magic Flute. We're also running a Vivaldi program, which is geared towards upper elementary school students. And it helps the students hear music with new ears, so they can hear the sound of a violin as the sound of the wind, or they can hear the sound of a violin as the sound of a bird. So putting sounds of nature into instrumental form. And they're also invited to see the composition strategy. So the character of Vivaldi is played by our director, and he introduces the idea of what it takes to become a composer, what it takes to become a musician in an orchestra, the ideas of practicing and teamwork and using your imagination are in that program. So it's not just about classical music, it's a greater, more holistic approach to, life as a student musician or as a student in general, practicing and using your imagination. Right now we are featuring our Peter and the Wolf program with many of our school performances. And this is geared more towards lower elementary K-3 age students. It's based on the folk tale by Prokofiev that was originally composed and presented in 1936. And we have a professional mime that comes with us. So not only are the students hearing the instruments and they are performed live, they also have a theater component with the mime. And this particular production was created with the help of PBS Learning Media. So the students get to have a live in-school performance with us, but prior to our performance, we give the teachers and the schools access to the PBS Learning Media and show them all the different lesson components so that they can learn about the instrument sounds, the instrument characters prior to the show. And then when the Peter and the Wolf gets performed for them by the American Classical Orchestra, it just makes it a more rich experience. I have a super quick 30-second video. So that's just a little snippet of what the Peter and the Wolf program has been doing. And as I mentioned, we've been doing this for many, many years. We have several wonderful quotes. Well, we've got more than just these two, but this is what fit on the page for lack of a better choice. So PS 290, PS 75, the students really loved the performance and they draw pictures. They send us thank you cards. So it really is a monumental event for a lot of these kids. And the goal of me meeting with you all today is just to share a little bit about who we are and to let you know that we exist right here in New York City. We are a New York City based program. And we would love to bring Peter and the Wolf or the Imagination Vivaldi to your community, either in your schools or at any libraries. If you have a need, or if you know of any library community centers that need after school family events, we're happy to partner with you on that. And I just wanted to introduce us to you, and I really appreciate your time and your consideration. Again, if you have any questions, I'm here, and I would love to, follow up with anybody who believes that their school or their child or their grandchild would like to see this program. I'd be happy to bring it to you.
Thank you so much, Carly. Does anyone have any questions?
No, but I think we can find a way to get this out to our schools. Well, also, Carly, how do you manage to get into the schools? Do you have somebody, or you have a connection with the Department of Education?
That's the difficult part.
Yeah, I didn't quite hear the question. Could you ask it one more time? Sorry.
How do you find your way into the schools?
Oh, okay. So historically, we have been reaching out to either the principal or the parent coordinator for the schools, and they have invited us. And typically, actually, everybody who is booked to have our performance come to their school this year, it has been done through the parent coordinators. Actually, one principal is kind of spearheading the event as well. So it's a combination of the principals and the parent coordinators. And typically it's funded by PTA funds, but unfortunately that becomes cost prohibitive. So if a PTA coordinator or a PTA budget doesn't have extra funds for music enrichment, then they're not able to bring us. So, you know, that we're looking for other avenues in which to fund the performance so that we can go to more schools.
I just have one question. So, does your organization also do residencies in schools or just performances?
Just one performance. And that's why we were really proud of the PBS Learning Media connection, because it brings the lessons over the course of, you know, however long the music teacher wants to spread it out in their classroom, before the actual in-school performance. So they get to experience the music more. They have a longer time to learn what a violin is, what a flute is, what a French horn is, before they see it for the first time in their school. So it becomes more like a unit of study rather than just a one-time performance. And the same can be said of the Vivaldi program. Vivaldi's themes from Vivaldi's music make great recorder lessons if it's a 4th or 5th grade or you know, 3rd grade classroom. A music teacher can incorporate some of those Vivaldi tunes. They can study the 4 seasons and programmatic music a little bit in advance. We send a teacher's resource guide before we come to the school, and then the performance of CMK by the American Classical Orchestra tends to be like the final event in a series of studies, but we don't do residencies in schools.
Okay. Alan?
If you don't mind my asking, what's the typical cost to put something on in a public school?
It depends on which program you choose, because the Peter and the Wolf has 6 musicians in the mime. So each one of those performers has to be, you know, compensated for their time. And then if it's the Vivaldi program, there are 4 instrumentalists plus the conductor. So that's obviously a different price. But I'd be happy to share all of that with you at another time if you want to follow up.
Do you have any performances with just one? Do you have any performances with just one instrument?
Do we no, not well, we actually, to say we do, we've had with 2. So we've had the Magic Recorder that has gone throughout the schools, and it's a 1 recorder soloist with the conductor on the harpsichord. So the harpsichord is a particular Baroque instrument. It's kind of like the precursor to a piano, and we carry a real live harpsichord to schools, and so they get to hear a really unique keyboard instrument as well as the recorder. And the reason why that particular program is so helpful for schools, and particularly music teachers, is most elementary music curriculums in the tri-state area incorporate some form of recorder instrument lessons. And so this has a professional playing the instrument, so it makes it seem a little bit more real rather than just you know, something for elementary schools. It's a real instrument that gets played with an orchestra.
Thank you.
So I think they're looking for more connections to more schools, because obviously we have the connections to the PTAs in our district, and the principals. So principals are usually typically busy, but the PTA coordinators, if we could, I think that's what you're looking for, Carly, correct?
Yes, yes.
Because you know a handful of schools, we know a whole district full of schools and more. So I think that's what you're looking for.
Correct. Introductions to schools who would really like to have music enrichment, and, you know, a local New York City organization coming to their school. Yeah, absolutely. If you could introduce me, that would be super helpful, because it's more meaningful to hear from somebody that they know, hey, the Classical Music for Kids program is really beneficial for students. Maybe take a look at it, rather than just me cold emailing and they don't know who I am or why I am, etc. So introductions are definitely appreciated.
And I know the council member was going to send out letters to all of the.
He did.
Yes. So I think if we can help, that would be in addition to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we really, really greatly appreciate any help and support that you all can offer. And again, we do community performances. And that's something that I don't know about your neighborhood as much as I would like to. Any libraries, community centers where parents and children could enjoy the program together on a weekend or an after school program, we would be more than happy to coordinate that with your neighborhood as well.
Great, yeah, we'll definitely discuss it. I know that several of our PTAs are really hurting right now in terms of funds. So we'll have to look at, you know, which ones where this could actually be a possibility. Just a question on the libraries, when you do perform in the libraries, then who is kind of picking up the tab for that?
Typically in not New York City, I'm new, by the way, it looks to me that there are library funds. So I know in my own county, the library is a county organization and they have their own budget, and those budgets include public performances, school children, weekend activities, arts related activities. And so it comes directly from their budget, the library itself. And that's one thing I would love to learn about, particularly in your neighborhood. How are the libraries funded, and you know, how could we work together with them?
Great, it was very nice meeting you. Thank you for that great presentation.
Thank you, Josephine. I appreciate your introduction and your time.
Well, we'll be in touch. Okay, our final presentation tonight is from Muddy Paws, and they can talk to us about their animal rescue services, or whatever else said. I'm not really sure.
No worries. Thank you so much for having us. I also have a short presentation, so I will try to share my screen. And just let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Just gonna go into present mode. Okay. And can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. So we are Muddy Paws Rescue. We have been on one other of these meetings back in the spring. We have recently moved into the Hell's Kitchen community. I say recently, but it's actually been a couple of years now. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But the mission of Muddy Paws Rescue is to build and support a thriving community of dog-loving humans dedicated to ending unnecessary euthanasia of companion dogs. So we do this through our 4 pillars, which are life-saving, community, education, and innovation. We operate on 4 core values, and that is positive, welcoming, responsive, and supportive. These are generally the 4 words that we saw come up in our reviews in the early day of our operations, and we've sort of vowed to always embody these values. So if you're new to our work, I will introduce you to our staff. So I'm Juliet. I'm the Donor Relations and Events Manager. I sort of spearheaded our large Hell's Kitchen event last June. So that's why I am here today. But we are a team of 10, and our executive director, Rachel Ziering, started Muddy Paws almost 8 years ago. I have been with Muddy Paws the second longest right after her, over 5.5 years. So just to take you down memory lane, we began our operations in 2016 with the goal of saving 300 dogs. We wound up saving 764 that first year. We kind of grew faster than we could ever have imagined, and we created core teams with specialized volunteers to help us do our day-to-day operations. We committed to an open adoptions philosophy and established our partnership with Animal Care Centers of New York City in 2017. An open adoptions philosophy, for those who don't know, is generally a conversation-based approach to anyone looking to adopt or foster an animal. We generally try to remove the barriers that most people might experience when trying to rescue a dog. Generally, these kinds of questions on an application might look like, do you have a yard? Or when can we come into your home and do a house check? And Muddy Paws doesn't do anything like that. We're very open adoption. We remove these barriers and we match dogs that are best for that person's situation, their financial capabilities, their home, if they have any kids. We generally do not do hard no adoptions. Everything is a conversation first. So in 2018, we grew to 5 full-time staff members. And in 2019, the ASPCA donated an adoption van for us to use. We have a mobile adoption event sort of program. So our events are typically at PetSmart in Flatiron or at Petco in Turtle Bay or Union Square. But we are doing more and more events at our Hell's Kitchen location, which I don't believe I've said it yet, but it's 9th Avenue and 54th. So come by and see what we're doing, but we'll get into that in a little bit as well. And in 2019, we placed 1,000 dogs into homes. So that was a big year for us. And since then, we've placed 1,000 dogs into homes each year. So in 2020, of course, as we all know, COVID happened and we had to pivot the way we did everything. But we did keep growing and we hit 5,000 adoptions, 10 full-time staff members, and we created our own annual fundraiser known as the Pack Challenge. And this is also when we moved into our Hell's Kitchen Pack HQ. And just recently, in 2022, we removed the word application from our processes. So you no longer have to apply to adopt or apply to foster. We now do what we call a registration. And this, we believe, is sort of a part of our open adoptions model. It does not insinuate that you're going to get denied for an animal. And it does not sort of raise that possibility that someone will not be allowed to adopt. We are not the gatekeepers necessarily of these dogs. We need the community support and their help. So in 2023, we planned our first major Hell's Kitchen event, and that was our block party. We raised over $50,000, and our Pack Challenge event raised a record $250,000. So today, as I mentioned, our adoption events are usually at our Pack HQ or at these different PetSmart and Petco locations. They are our biggest grant funders. So we do have to do a certain number of adoptions at their stores each year. And if you ever walk by our headquarters on a Saturday morning, you'll typically see this scene right here. We welcome 20 to 30 dogs of all ages, sizes to our headquarters, and that's where we keep our supplies and where our fosters come to pick up the dogs. So where do our dogs come from? We are a foster-based rescue. We do not keep any dogs in that Hell's Kitchen location. So we partner strategically with our open intake facilities. The main shelter partners that are open intake are New York City Animal Care Centers, the ASPCA, Bowling Green, Warren County Humane Society in Kentucky, and other shelters throughout the states that might reach out to us for support. So we've taken dogs from Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, you name it. And our community is sort of how we are able to do everything that we do. We call our community affectionately, they're known as our pack. This includes our fosters, adopters, four-legged alumni, volunteers, and donors. We do lots of community volunteer events and get-togethers. We have, of course, our Pack Challenge peer-to-peer fundraiser and lots of fun events, and that typically happens in July, but we will be trialing it in May this year. And we have a very supportive online community. So if anyone here is interested in adopting or fostering, we have a great support system, both internally and throughout our pack. So just some statistics for you. We've saved 7,559 lives saved. I think that number is actually a little bit higher after this weekend. We've had 15,663 all-time donors, 211 active volunteers, and that's kind of updated since July. We have 2,000 registered fosters, although that does not mean we have 2,000 fosters at a given time. This is just, again, 2,000 people in our system. And we have 107,000 followers on Instagram. So that leads me to our 2023 block party, as I mentioned earlier, our largest event. This was a glimpse into what the day looked like if you were not able to be there. We shut down 54th between 9th and 10th Avenues, and we did a large-scale adoption event. We also invited our partner at Animal Care Centers of New York City to also do adoptions. We had lots of community resources available and businesses that both sponsored or tabled at the event as vendors. And we also invited fellow nonprofits such as Meow Parlor to also have a great presence for our cat lovers in the community, which is myself included. And we've done lots of other community resources at this event specifically, but we do hope to do it again in 2024 and make it even bigger and better than ever. So that's sort of all I was looking to share today as a brief overview of what we do, but I do welcome any questions. If I can answer anything more specifically, please let me know.
Thank you for that great presentation, Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to say that I'm part of the transportation committee, and I remember when you came to us for the permit, and I also live on 54th between 9th and 10th, so it's my block where the block party was, and it was a fantastic party. The most fun the block has been all year, so I do hope you guys will come back this year. It's also the cleanest I've seen our block. Finally got all of the placard NYPD vehicles to move, and the auto center vehicles to move, and the street actually got clean, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for saying that. And we do hope to be back hopefully in October next year, if everyone will have us. But more to come on that as we sort of work with the company we worked with before as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Leslie?
I live.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
that's okay. It's okay. Let the room go. Go ahead if the room wants to go.
Yeah, I just have one question on when your fosters or your adoptions, are you giving any kind of education with the fosters and the adoptions, Curb Your Dog in particular? I know that's a huge problem all over New York City, especially new and younger people who own dogs have absolutely no idea what Curb Your Dog means. So are you forcing or educating at all?
Absolutely. Yeah, education is really important to us. We actually spent about a year building out these higher level education trainings that were sort of all aligned with our values and what we feel is a positive reinforcement training method. But we start from the very basics. So when anyone is interested in fostering with us, we do ask them to watch a video first. And then we have a safety quiz that they must pass in order to get a dog from us. And then when they actually pick up the dog in person, we go over things a little bit more in depth. But we, being a New York City and sort of younger rescue, we do sort of attract, first time pet owners and people who have never maybe cared for a dog in their adult lifetime, but maybe have only grown up with dogs. So we definitely provide a ton of resources and support both to our fosters and to our adopters. We send everyone a decompression video, whether they're fostering or adopting from us, in hopes that we're setting our dogs up for success. And then, of course, when someone's getting a dog from us, we have one-on-one consultations with them. So we are kind of going through making sure that, first of all, the dog that they're bringing into their home is a good fit for them and their particular lifestyle and family and their home. But we also are educating them on, of course, veterinary care, resources, you name it. Our adopters also get lots of amazing resources for veterinarians and dog services in the area. So people kind of know where to go first if they need any sort of support or help. And when you're fostering with us, you do have someone that you can text from the hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We also have an emergency line, but someone that can sort of talk you through any sort of concern or question you might have. So our goal is to, educate our community and build a community that's going to be sustainable and keep the dogs in their homes for forever, ideally. And our fosters, of course, are keeping the dogs safe.
Okay, and Curb Your Dog. Are you? Yes.
Absolutely.
Curb your dog, meaning the dog steps off the curb and poops or pees in the street, not on the sidewalk.
Yeah, well, it's actually interesting, but most of our dogs require grass to use the bathroom because so many of them are from out of state that they are not familiar with a city environment, and most of them behaviorally takes them a very long time to actually learn where they can use the bathroom in the city. Of course, that's ideal. I do the same for my dog, and we always encourage it, but yeah, most of the time fosters are bringing the dog to like grass patches or ideally off the sidewalk whenever it is safe.
And not putting them in tree beds because people pick them up and put them in the flower beds.
Yeah, that would not be any of our dogs. I promise you that.
Are you encouraging people or discouraging them for doing such things? Because a lot of that behavior is becoming worse in the city in recent years.
I totally understand. Yeah, we absolutely are treating, and asking our fosters and adopters to be respectful and, of course, to pick up after their dogs and to be conscious of things like that. So, yeah, I completely understand and agree with that. And I do believe that we are doing a good job at that, but feel free to let me know if you've seen otherwise, and I will get to the bottom of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
That's everything.
Wendy, I think.
I'm just gonna add though, related to that, and thank you for the presentation, but most importantly, thank you for all the work that you do. It's incredibly important. As a dog owner, it is challenging, for sure, and increasingly challenging to navigate the city with trash bags, and just, whatever we see, with challenging glass everywhere, all sorts of issues. I'm curious, aside from just kind of general awareness that, you're building here, are there other asks or requests, or there are things that your folks who say, I would like to foster, but this is particularly challenging in the city, or feedback you get from your fosters? It would just be good for us to know that you're getting so much macro feedback from folks about dogs that make things a little easier to be a responsible pet owner in the city.
Yeah, I believe it's the question, just to recap, just in terms of responsibility. It's a little hard to hear. I apologize, certain people in the room. I think I caught most of that, but generally the question is about responsibility for adopting a dog.
Well, no, just is there anything that we can be helpful or good for us to be aware of that you're getting feedback from all your foster parents around what might make things easier for folks to foster dogs in the city to help? I know you already have 2,000 fosters, which is amazing, to get that number up, or just to make that an easier experience in the city.
Got it. Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I think generally speaking, we try to remove the financial burden for foster parents in New York City. As you can imagine, the cost of living is really difficult. So people tend to be really wary of taking in a dog, even if it's short term. Our city shelter has been in crisis, and that's Animal Care Centers of New York City. I actually used to work there prior to my time with Muddy Paws. I think they have a really difficult reputation, and if everyone here can be aware that they're actually just trying to do their best. They are contracted by the government to not say no to any animal that comes through their doors, whether that animal is dangerous or unhealthy, or it could be a variety of things. It could be any species. They can't turn it down. They have to actually figure out what to do with that animal, where it can go, how to house it safely, all while following the law, including keeping them there for 3 days and following all protocols before making, unnecessary or necessary decisions for the animals. So I think generally speaking, being aware of that reputation and actually encouraging the community to support the local shelter, and when they're worried about it or they want to work with a rescue to support, animal welfare, rescues like ours do support fosters in significant ways. So as I mentioned, financially is really big. We provide everything a foster could possibly need for their time fostering with us if they need it. And just in general, there's a really great support system in place. So I think we kind of have a great foundation there, but we do need everyone's support to really turn things around for our local animals. And then again, of course, dogs, cats in our country. Thanks for your question.
Leslie?
Thank you. I want to thank the chairs for putting this on the agenda tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, guys. I am with Charlie. I live right around the block, and I remember that event. That was a great event. And I'm glad you mentioned the van that comes on the weekend mornings, because I go out and I look for that van and I see all the dogs that come out, and my husband yells at me every single Saturday morning, if you come back with another rescue, I'm going to kill you. That's what he says every single Saturday. But anyway, I have one question. Where do you get most of your funding from? Is it private donations? Like, do you get, does the city help? How does the funding work?
Our largest grant funder is PetSmart. They provide usually $75,000 a year, but this is a grant. It's not something we can rely on. We have to apply for it year after year. Right now, we do not have any multi-year commitments, so our budget is generally based from our projections from how we've done the year prior. We do get most of our donations from individuals. However, that's all really transparent as well in our annual report, which you can see on our website. Again, I think most of our revenue comes from adoption fees and also just from these grants and fundraising efforts that we put on. So I'm doing special events, so I'm constantly putting on fundraising events for Muddy Paws that are generally bringing in $5,000 to $10,000 for us. And our adoption fees usually range from $250 to $575. It just kind of varies depending on the age of the dog. And we actually have reduced fees as well for Animal Care Center of New York City, any dog we pull from them. And yeah, individual donations through these fundraisers are generally how we're able to support our work.
I ask because the city sometimes helps out nonprofits, especially if the nonprofit is working with a city like a ASPCA or a city agency in tandem. So I just think that's good to know for us as a board moving forward. But I know there's that element of nonprofit city funding that might be, I don't want to say available, but there might be a window or door there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, if anyone has any ideas or interested in something, we're constantly planning for and trying to figure out. We will be an 8-year-old organization this February, so it's all still somehow really new to us. We're kind of figuring things out as we go, but we would love any sort of connections you might have to support our work. As you can imagine, vet care for 1,000 dogs a year is quite expensive, but we are trying to be as sustainable as we can as we go and grow.
Hey, thank you so much for being here on that presentation. It was very nice meeting you.
Thank you so much.
So that concludes our presentation portion of this meeting, and we'll go into old new business or any discussion about these letters. Can we discuss the letters or any potential letters, Jesse, or how does this work since we don't have quorum?
Sorry, say again.
Can we discuss any potential letters since we do not have quorum?
Yeah, you can discuss if there was what would be the foundation or the main points of a letter, if the letter was gonna come to as new business or forward.
Okay, well, I would like to suggest that we do a new business letter on the 60-day shelter situation, just basically highlighting just this impossible situation that you're in, right? Now, this is, take it through, lay out some of the points that Iris made, how difficult it is to get busing. I mean, I think that's what the mayor has been saying up until now. The moves are fine because the kids will get bused. We know that that's just not going to happen. So just sort of laying that out and, asking for, we did a letter when the Skyline was converted into a single men's shelter. And in that letter, we did ask that the child could remain in the same shelter until the school year was over. Of course, that didn't do anything, but we can ask for the same thing this time. And the issue is not just the busing, it's also after October 31st, that's when the budget cycle ends. So say a school has so many students. After October 31st, that's what you're getting money for, the money that you've already asked for. So if they're moving students around and suddenly a school gets 50 more students, you're in a lot of trouble. There is a way of getting the money, but it's very long, it's a long process and it could be months down the road. So this is just not a good situation, right? And then that field is a whole nother thing that I will discuss. She was talking about in Brooklyn, the field with the cots and yes, Boyd Bennett field, and then the bathrooms outside. I mean, no place to do your homework. It just doesn't make any
You can't even
sense.
stand up from what she said. It's a tent with 3 cots and you cannot stand inside. Outside bathroom. That's just,
It's
unacceptable.
inhumane. It really
I mean,
is. I mean, I think that the whole point is to say, you just need to
unacceptable.
move on as quickly as possible, and that's just what they're doing now. So, yeah.
Particularly what she mentioned, the people that are been approved now to get jobs, to disrupt them like that, that's just starting from zero again. I mean, I think I would throw in the word unacceptable a number of times in
Yes,
there.
yes, exactly. I will do that.
Yeah, I think I would totally support that letter at full board. I mean, that's just outrageous. I mean, that's another word I would throw in there. Not in a good way. Yeah, that's just, I mean, 5 times in one school year, potentially.
It's just so disruptive for the schools too. I mean, I guess I am.
They have a
Right.
new kid.
I mean, and the teachers, I mean, both my children now running 3 or 4 asylum seekers from their class, and they've been integrated in the class, and they don't speak English, and there's challenges, but they're friends, and to think that every 2 months it's gonna be a new kid who's shell shocked and doesn't, know anyone and has to adjust. And
No, I'm used to Wendy sitting next to me every day, and now suddenly Wendy's gone and there's no one, so now I'm like concerned, and then 2 weeks later, there's some other kid there.
it's just a lot of disruption.
Disruptive on all sides
Yeah.
for anyone.
And it's also affected the PTA funding, which we had a school come and talk to us about that a couple of months ago, where they're just not able to, any money that they have left over, they're trying to help these children. Of course, they're being moved on to different schools. And then on top of that, they're not able to raise the same amount of money because.
As the other schools.
And then a lot of asylum seekers, obviously, they don't have money, so they can't contribute to this pot. So that's another part of it.
I think you have consensus.
Yeah, okay. Oh, Leslie has something to say.
I actually, if we do a letter, I think, and I'm Josephine and Ellen, I think you're thinking the same way. It should be limited just to the relationship to schools, right? And busing, not the whole, it's a question, right? Not the whole migrant thing in Brooklyn or how they're being housed. Because I think that's going to open it. That's just a huge undertaking. And I think we need a lot more, I guess, information on that. It might even be another committee, but if we are going to do a letter, Josephine and Alan, just 2 points. One, I think they should prioritize families in the shelter system. When they move things around, they should prioritize, which they're not going to do. Well, they're not doing, but we could tie it into, because of like Inga said, the ties to school, the need for more of a stable atmosphere. I think that would be 1 point. And the second is that was I thought was rubbing me the wrong way was the 60-day notice. They should add the other option is they can stay if they want, or they can reapply, whatever the wording is that Iris said that they were omitting. I don't want to say purposefully, but possibly purposefully, but that should be and that can be tied back into the education portion as well. Like we could say, because if they know that, then they know they can give their kids a little more of a stable environment. But we think that you're putting this letter out there and they don't know all their options. Please provide them with all the options. Those would be my major 2 points.
Yeah, you're right. I agree that, we should probably, as much as I want to include the information about the field because it's so outrageous, to stay focused. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
And the whole right to shelter, that comes from McKinney-Vento. That's an act that is specifically geared towards homeless students in temporary housing. And that's a nationwide act. And these children have a right to housing, so a right to shelter. So we can certainly include that. And Jesse?
I was just gonna say, it's unfortunate that Maria's not here, because I agree with Leslie, I think there's a broader conversation that should probably be transferred eventually over to housing and human services, because this is impacting that
Yes.
component, especially the HPD. I didn't know HPD had her extension.
I didn't know that either.
Heard of that, and so
Yeah.
I think what would be good if we can, make sure Maria sees this portion of the meeting, and so she can bring that back to housing and human services to discuss further.
Right.
But I agree with Leslie's point about it being, centering it on the schools.
Alan?
Well, just, what is the stated purpose? Is it just to make room for new?
No, just to get rid of,
Get rid of,
I haven't heard,
get rid of.
yeah,
so,
don't get too
But the
comfortable.
Row Hotel is not turning back into a tourist hotel in the near future, right?
No.
I mean, just the Row Hotel, for example, on 8th Avenue was mentioned, I mean,
No.
we're continuing to receive new arrivals. So it is to get rid of, but I guess it is also to make room, I mean, I don't know.
I don't think it's, contract.
Yeah, to make it
people
not
very
very here.
uncomfortable, right?
To make the
exactly.
plane ticket anywhere in the country the most attractive option.
Right, and don't come to New York City, because
You can put the tent in the
Right.
field, right? All right, so that's a new business letter, and in regards to Eric Washington and the Colored Girls Law, I think we should maybe set up a meeting with Butcher's office and find out what's happening in the Department of Sanitation before we make any kind of statement on that. And Inga, certainly, if you want to, if anyone here wants to join, but certainly we want to be
Yeah, no.
involved, so.
Definitely. We're gonna do a little more research into that, the municipal archives. I think that's really, I mean, the way he explained it, that's a well-rounded, well-organized group. I think they would get the most different variety of education and programming out of a group like that.
well, you should see if they do operate buildings.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into it.
Okay, so,
It's
Jesse,
gonna
did
be
you,
a long haul.
oh yeah, that's gonna be, yeah, very good.
Yeah.
The sooner we get
We need
started.
to get the building,
Purpose.
they gotta close the window, they've got to start something. You need
Yes,
to find the timeline first.
Yes,
Because.
and they have to fix the repairs, I mean, the
Yeah.
holes in the window and.
It's just gonna
Right.
deteriorate,
Yeah,
and then it's gonna
exactly.
tear it down.
Yeah, and say, well, too bad, but yeah, we can't afford to lose this.
Yeah,
space,
oh,
right,
that's
right,
too bad.
right.
And I don't know how we could reach out to schools or PTAs. I know Eric's office did reach out to everyone in his district and see Council District 3, all the schools.
What we did, and everyone's,
No,
Yeah.
not about, we're talking about the orchestra now.
That's for the orchestra, yeah. So if we can do it for our district, or at least the ones. They do work on a sliding scale, so they'll work with some that have less funding, and it's not that expensive, so I think if we could help reach out. It does expose kids to, especially some children that will never otherwise ever see live classical music.
I'm happy to take the presentation forward to the principals that we have. Everybody.
Do you think the principals are receptive? They're so busy. Is it more the PTA?
No, I think we could ask for them to cut it down.
usually the schools have their PTA information on their website, like their uses their PTA and their
Right.
give.
Parent coordinator.
Yeah, and then they'll
So
also.
yeah, if you could do that and then they can follow up with the schools. I think they're having a hard time figuring out which schools and who to go to. There's so many.
So suggest.
Yeah, so if you could do that, Jessica, that would be awesome. And you can ask her to change it or cut it down or do whatever.
Sure.
So Jesse, did you want to reach out to Butler's office or should one of us do it? We don't have to follow it, sanitation.
That's, I'll reach out. I'm sure I'll follow up. We can do that.
Mhm. And so the only other business, the book drive, since we only have one shelter, we're only going to work with, I'm going to email you on this. PS 111, so Matt is working on that and They're waiting, they're having some sort of parent event right after Thanksgiving, so that's the best time they can do it and get more books. They actually had a room full of books there that are ready to be given away, so it's a good start. So, and I would imagine that most elementary schools actually do have a lot of books to give away. So, and, it makes sense now because I've been reaching out to the shelters and now hearing all of this, it totally makes sense why they're not getting back to me. So the one shelter that is taking the books is the permanent location, so that's why they're taking them, but we have no idea what's happening with these hercs and these hotels, and it's just a moving target, so.
See, I think part of the purpose of the HERS, I thought, if I understood correctly, was to actually find other places for folks to move to.
Well, actually, DHS, their number one goal when a family comes into the shelter system is to find housing above social services and everything. That is their job, is to get these families to find housing. The HERPS was different because the HERPS was actually, it was a sanctuary. There were sanctuaries, which basically meant that the families could be there indefinitely because they were there for so much more than not really finding you housing, but to help you overcome your trauma. And but now as we see that has ended, and
Yeah, well,
they're not helping them find housing at all.
well, they
They're
can't
saying-
find other places to move to because of the state, upstate, and the governor has kind of like put a kibosh on that whole thing about, getting, other communities to be involved with, finding places for these folks to live and work. So that started off somewhat, I think,
Yeah.
as a place to move them out of the shelters and into more permanent housing somewhere, whether it's Long Island or Syracuse. It's not a working situation.
I mean, it seems that now that the goal is really to move families around until you get so tired of it that you just get a bus ticket anywhere and go. But there has to be a more humane way of doing it. Okay, all right. So-
One new old thing, you guys know that Tamara has
Yes.
left the shed.
She let us know.
So, okay, I've met the new replacement, and I've been trying for years to get numbers on how many actual free tickets, how many reduced tickets, and things like that, which have you guys ever gotten that from anyone? I actually, at the last board meeting, got a little, more vocal, because it's a new person, and I said, we need this, just, email.
For those who don't know, so when the shed was created, the idea of the shed was created as part of the Hudson Yards rezoning. The council member was given
The speaker.
a seat on the board, and who the council member would defer to select someone to sit on that for them.
Is it the
2
speaker or
years.
the council? I think it's the speaker of the city of New York, yeah?
Maybe. Then if it's the speaker of the city of New York, then I don't know if the current speaker of the city of New York knows that you're the.
She appointed me,
She appointed you?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
because I was Corey's representative for his 2 terms,
Okay.
and then when he resigned, she appointed me as her representative.
Is this person willing to come on to one of our meetings? Can we reach out?
I can probably, ask,
Maybe for January?
yeah. I just had it at the beginning of the meeting. Sorry.
Something you just send around.
I could just email it, 'cause I had it at the beginning of the meeting and now it's gone. It's in my emails, but it's varied from a couple weeks ago at the last board meeting. But, this new person seems to be more forthcoming, and I actually, told the board members that we've asked for this for years and we've always gotten these sort of answers and we want statistics. Who, where are you offering these tickets to and who's actually using them? Not just you're ticking off all the boxes saying, well, we told everybody, but no one knows about it. We want to know who's actually utilizing tickets. So I'll give you the statistics.
Okay, so great, that would be really helpful. Okay, thank you, everyone. We don't even have to vote to adjourn because.
This meeting never happened anyway.
Thank you all for being here. Okay.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.